The great glass auditorium of Kingsley School of Business had never held a silence like this one. 400 people sat frozen beneath the words etched in steel above the stage. Merit before means, and not one of them dared to move. On the stage, under a spotlight meant for a champion, Arav Malhotra stood holding the Founder's Cup, a heavy crystal thing shaped like a rising arrow. His hands were slick. The trophy trembled against his monogrammed cufflinks. A few feet away stood a young man in a plain navy hoodie and secondhand sneakers, the one the whole cohort had spent a year calling the driver's kid. He wasn't shouting. His face was almost gentle. He simply held out one hand, palm up, and said 7 words that would take Arav Malhotra's entire world apart. Give the cup to the people who earned it. A phone lay face up on the podium, its screen still glowing from the call that had just ended. A call that had turned the most powerful people in the room the color of wet cement. The dean would not lift his eyes. The head of the donor board was gripping her chair. And Arav Malhotra, whose father had pledged $15 million to put the family name on this building's newest floor, finally understood exactly who he had spent a year humiliating. To understand how a scholarship student in a $10 hoodie brought a tycoon's son to his knees in front of the entire school, and why every important adult in that auditorium had gone pale, we have to go back. Back to a gray morning in a parking circle, a black town car, and the first cruel thing Arav Malhotra ever said about a man he thought was nobody. The town car smelled of pine air freshener and old leather, and Danny Bello loved riding in the front seat of it more than any car he would ever own.
His father drove it. Joe Bello had driven cars for other people for 26 years. Airport runs at 4 in the morning, corporate accounts, weddings, funerals, the occasional celebrity who tipped in insults. He was a broad, unhurried man with gray at his temples and a habit of thanking toll booth workers by name. He kept a roll of butterrum candies in the console and a photograph of his late wife clipped to the visor, and he had never once, in his son's entire life, complained about the work. A man who gets people home safe, he liked to say, is doing something that matters. When the car pulled up at the bottom of the long drive that led to Kingsley School of Business, Danny got out with a canvas duffel and looked up at the place that had, in a way no one on that campus could have guessed, defined his family for the last decade. Glass and pale stone, a bell that rang the hour from a tower older than the country stock exchange, a wall of bronze donor plaques by the entrance, polished every morning. Because Danny Bello was not really the scholarship transfer his file said he was. His full name was Daniel Bello, and he was the only child and sole heir of Ada Bello, the woman who, starting with a single storefront career college and a secondhand copier, had built Meridian Education Group into one of the largest and most respected private education companies in the country. 10 years ago, Meridian had quietly acquired a proud, cash-strapped, coasting old institution called Kingsley and poured a fortune into saving it. The endowment that ran Kingsley, the land it stood on, the board that governed it, all of it rolled up in the end to Meridian. And Meridian, since Ada Bello's death 2 years earlier, rolled up to a trust with exactly one beneficiary.
Danny had been at his mother's bedside near the end. Ada Bello, who had come to this country with one suitcase and an accent people used against her, who had been underestimated in every boardroom she ever walked into and had bought most of those boardrooms anyway, had held her son's hand and asked him for one thing. "Before you ever take my seat on that board," she'd said, her voice thin, but her eyes still sharp enough to cut, "go be a student there. A real one, not the owner's son. No name, no car, no soft landing. Walk in the same door as the kid who's terrified he doesn't belong, and find out how my school treats the people who can do nothing for it. That will tell you the only thing worth knowing, whether the place still deserves to exist." Ada had built Meridian on a single conviction, one she'd earned the hard way,
that talent is spread evenly across the world, but opportunity is not, and that the entire point of a great school is to close that gap, not to sell a velvet rope to people who were born on the right side of it. Near the end, what frightened her was not dying. It was a folder on her nightstand. Quiet reports that Kingsley was drifting back toward the thing she'd rescued it from. Admissions favors for big families, prizes that flowed toward money, a faculty slowly being taught to laugh a half-second too long at the right people's jokes. "I saved a ladder once," she told him. "Promise me you'll find out if it's still a ladder, or if it's turned back into a wall. Not from a memo, from the bottom of it." So Danny promised, and he meant it. What he had not expected was how much he would come to love the view from the bottom. The exhausted, funny, decent people who lived there. Not one of whom had the faintest idea that the quiet kid who took the late bus and skipped meals to save money could have bought the building they were standing in.
He enrolled under an arrangement Meridian's lawyers built to be boring. Danny Cole, scholarship transfer, small town 2 states away, father listed as self-employed driver, which was, after all, completely true. He took a shared room in the cheapest dorm. He wore the same rotation of hoodies. He let people assume what they assumed. And for 1 full year, not a single soul at Kingsley, not the dean, not his professors, not the young man about to make his life miserable, knew who he was. That young man announced himself, as he always did, with noise. A matte black sports coupe came howling up the no parking crescent in front of the main hall and stopped at an angle across the striped zone reserved for the shuttle that carried students with disabilities. The window slid down. Heir of Malhotra looked out from behind sunglasses that probably cost more than Danny's semester of books, scanned the sidewalk, and snapped his fingers at the nearest body, which happened to be Danny. "Bags. Trunk. Don't scratch the paint," Heir said, popping the trunk without looking at him. "And be quick. I've got a welcome brunch." Danny glanced at the trunk, then at Heir. "I don't work here," he said mildly. "And you're parked in the accessibility lane. The shuttle needs it." Heir lowered the sunglasses. He took in the hoodie, the duffel, the worn sneakers, and a slow, pleased smile spread across his face. The smile of someone who has just spotted a way to be entertained. "Oh, you're one of the aid kids," he said. "The scholarship said. Relax, I'm not going to bite. I'm just used to a certain standard of help." A couple of his friends had drifted over, drawn to the show. "Where are you even from?" "Small town. You wouldn't know it." Arav swung his bag over his shoulder and left the car diagonally across the lane for someone else to deal with. Word of advice, since we're going to be classmates, Kingsley's a serious place. People come here to network with people who matter. He walked off toward the brunch, and his friends laughed the exact amount he wanted them to. Danny didn't answer. He simply walked over, and because a girl in a wheelchair was already waiting at the curb for the blocked shuttle, he found campus security, quietly got the coupe moved, and held the door of the shuttle himself. It was the quiet of it that would, in time, drive Arav Malhotra to distraction. The kid never rose to the bait, and Arav had built his whole life out of bait. Inside the atrium, a slight young man was struggling to feed a stubborn vending machine, feeding it the same crumpled dollar 4 times while it spat the bill back at him. Marcus Bishop was 18, first in his family to make it past high school, and so nervous in this building that he developed a habit of apologizing to furniture. He had a mind like a bank vault. He could hold 6 columns of numbers in his head and find the error in all of them, and absolutely no idea that anyone might value that because no one ever had. He was also, by the luck of the housing lottery, Danny's roommate. Danny came up beside him, took the ruined dollar, smoothed it flat against the wall with the edge of his student ID, and fed it in. It went. The machine thumped out a granola bar. "Trick is the wall," Danny said, handing it over. "You, Marcus? We're in 214. I'm Danny." Yeah. Sorry.
Thanks. Marcus clutched the granola bar like it might be revoked. I keep thinking they're going to check my file and realize they let in the wrong person. They won't, Danny said. And if they ever do, we'll tell them they're lucky to have you. You did the SAT math section in, 20 minutes? Marcus blinked. How did you...
You left it on your desk. Danny grinned. 20 minutes and a perfect score. 10. If you ever want to run case prep, the back of that bus is the best study hall on this campus. Marcus laughed, startled, like a boy who hadn't expected to laugh today, and something in his shoulders came down an inch. He had no way of knowing that the roommate who just smoothed his dollar bill against a wall was the one person on campus with the power to make sure no one ever revoked anything from him again. And Danny had no way of knowing yet how much that friendship would cost, or how much it would be worth. The person who was kindest to Danny in those first weeks was the one with the least reason to bother. Her name was Rosa, and she ran the grill at the dining hall's late window, the one that stayed open for the students who worked jobs and came to eat when everyone else was asleep. She'd clocked Danny in the first week, a kid who ordered the cheapest thing and made it last, and started accidentally overportioning his plate, sliding an extra scoop across the counter with a look that dared him to argue. "You're too skinny to run a startup," she told him. "Founders eat. Sit." She didn't know she was force-feeding the owner's son. That was precisely why it counted. All of it. Rosa's extra scoop, Marcus's stunned laugh, the girl in the wheelchair who thanked him twice, went into a ledger Danny kept without quite meaning to. His mother had taught him to watch how people treated the ones who couldn't repay them. It was, she'd said, the only reliable test of character ever invented, and the world was full of people failing it in expensive shoes. He was about to watch one of them fail it spectacularly. To understand how much room the world makes for a young man like Orav Malhotra, you only had to watch a lecture hall rearrange itself around him. Seats were saved. Group projects fought to recruit him, not for what he'd contribute, but for the internships his father's contacts could conjure. Professors who should have known better accepted his late work with a smile. His father, Vikram Malhotra, had built a telecom and real estate fortune and had recently pledged $15 million to build the Malhotra trading floor, a glittering simulated markets lab on Kingsley's top level. Arav wore that pledge like a title. He genuinely believed the rules were a tax that other, smaller people paid. And for a while, he treated Danny like a mascot he could kick. It sharpened into something meaner the day the cohort learned about the Founders Cup. The Founders Cup was the thing serious Kingsley students organized their whole year around. Teams of two built a real startup from nothing, product, model, live pitch, and defended it before a panel of the school's most powerful alumni and a syndicate of venture investors. The winner took a substantial seed investment, a coveted spot in the school's incubator, and, the part that changed lives, guaranteed meetings with every fund in Kingsley's partner network. For a kid with money, it was a nice line on a resume. For a kid like Marcus, it was the whole ballgame. Danny and Marcus entered as a team. 10bus was a thing Danny had been quietly designing in his head for years, a platform called OpenLane. It was a fair dispatch cooperative for independent drivers, the airport guys, the medical transport vans, the late shift car service drivers like his father, who were being ground down by predatory apps that took 40 cents of every dollar and treated them like disposable parts. OpenLane pooled their dispatch, cut the fees to almost nothing, and let the drivers own the network they were building. Marcus built the matching engine and the unit economics. They were airtight. Danny built the product and knew the world it served down to the smell of pine air freshener. It was good. It was theirs. And it was, quietly, the best project in the cohort. Arav entered too, with a partner who did the work while Arav did the talking, and a fintech idea that was mostly a logo. He assumed he would win. He always had. Then he found out the aid kids were the favorites, and the cruelty began in earnest. It started small, the way it always does. Arav took to calling Danny Uber in the hallway, loudly, to see who would laugh. He rerouted a group email so Danny missed a case study meeting,
then reported him to the professor as unreliable. When Danny out-argued him cleanly in a strategy seminar, dismantling Arav's logo with a business plan stapled to it in front of everyone, without ever once being unkind about it, Arav smiled through it and got even later, where numbers couldn't protect anyone.
Because the thing that truly enraged Arav was that the driver's kid was good. Professor Nadia Haddad, who taught the brutal venture design studio and had made grown executives cry in case reviews, had started using Danny and Marcus's teardown of a failed logistics startup as the model answer. Marcus, asked to explain their pricing model on the whiteboard, had done it so cleanly that the room went quiet. To a young man who had been handed everything and built nothing, there was no insult on earth worse than watching someone with nothing build something real. So Arav escalated, and he did it through the softest target in the room, Marcus. He'd worked out fast that Marcus was terrified, and that terror was a lever. He started sitting behind Marcus in the studio and narrating him under his breath. Careful, scholarship. They'll take it back if you flunk. Until Marcus's hands shook too hard to type. He joked in the group chat that Marcus only got in to fill a diversity number. When Marcus finally worked up the nerve to ask a question in Haddad's class, Arav answered it for him in a slow, loud voice, as if speaking to a child, and half the room laughed before they could stop themselves. The worst of it came on a Thursday. The cohort had a parents and alumni mixer, a glossy evening of blazers and business cards. And Vikram Malhotra's office, as it did for every event, booked a car service to ferry the family from the airport. The driver assigned that night, by pure and perfect coincidence, was Joe Bello. Danny saw his father before Arav did. Joe was standing by the town car at the curb, in his pressed jacket, holding the door. And Danny, not thinking, not calculating, just glad, crossed the whole circle and hugged him. "Dad, you didn't tell me it was the Kingsley run." "Didn't know till the dispatch pinged," Joe said, holding his son at arm's length, grinning. "Look at ya. You eatin'?" And Arav, coming down the steps with his parents, put it together and could not resist. His voice carried across the whole circle, pitched to be heard. "Wait, that's your dad? The driver?" He laughed, delighted, turning to make sure his father caught it. "Your dad drives people for a living? How embarrassing. God, it all makes sense now. The bus, the hoodie, the little charity project." He looked Joe up and down the way you'd inspect a rental car for scratches. "Hey, Chief, pop the trunk, would you? And there's a stain on the backseat. Sort it out before the return trip." Joe Bello, who had been spoken to like that 10,000 times in 26 years, simply nodded, unbothered, a mountain the weather couldn't reach. "Of course, sir. I'll take care of it." But Danny felt something go cold and very still in his chest, the specific, patient anger of a person who holds every card and is choosing, for reasons of his own, not to play them yet. He put a hand on his father's arm. "The seat's fine, Dad," he said quietly, and to Arav, evenly. "You could try, please. It's free." Arav grinned like he'd won something. "Manners from the valet family. Cute." He climbed into the car his own family had hired and let his father's driver close the door. Later, alone, Joe found his son at the edge of the parking circle. "Don't spend your fire on that boy," Joe said, reading Danny's face the way he'd read it since it was small. "Your mother could have bought and sold his whole family before breakfast, and she'd have still held the door for me. That's the part he'll never understand, and it's the part that beats him in the end. Every time. You don't have to. Just be who she raised."
"I know, Dad," Danny said. But a thread had pulled tight in him that night, and it wasn't about the insult to himself. He could carry that all day. It was that Arav had aimed it at the two people Danny would set the whole world on fire to protect. A gentle roommate who apologized to vending machines, and a man who got strangers home safe for a living, and had never asked anyone for a thing. Arov, meanwhile, had found a new game he liked even better than mocking the driver. He'd decided the driver's kid needed to be knocked out of the Founders Cup, and he wasn't picky about how. First, he tried paperwork. An anonymous complaint appeared claiming Marcus had violated the honor code on a problem set. Baseless, and dismissed the moment Haddad reviewed the work. But the message underneath was unmistakable. I can make you spend every week here defending your right to be here. It was the one weapon that genuinely frightened a scholarship kid, and Arov had found it by instinct, the way a shark finds blood. When that didn't break them, he went to the cafe and did the thing with the money, cutting the line where Danny was buying a $2 coffee, accidentally knocking it down the front of Danny's one good shirt, then peeling a $100 bill off a roll and dropping it on the counter. For the dry cleaning, Arov said. "Oh, do you people dry clean, or is that a sink situation?" His friends howled. But the student working the register, a sharp-eyed sophomore named Zoe Tran, pushed the 100 right back across the counter. "His coffee's on me," she said. "Yours is full price. We don't take blood money at this register." It cost her. Arov photographed her name tag and promised she'd regret it. But Danny saw it, and he wrote her name in the ledger under the heading he reserved for people who were brave when bravery was expensive.
That night, Danny sat on the edge of his narrow dorm bed and did a different kind of math than the kind that had built Open Lane. Arov hadn't just come for him. He'd humiliated a terrified freshman, threatened a barista, mocked a working man in front of his own son, and was now trying to bleed a scholarship kid out through the honor board. It was a pattern. And patterns, Danny knew from watching his mother take apart competitors who thought they were untouchable, are exactly what turn a handful of ugly moments into an undeniable case. So he stopped being angry and started being organized. Dates, names, screenshots, who was hurt and who was brave. He wasn't raging, he was building a file. And a young man who builds a file is far more dangerous than one who throws a punch. That week brought the first small, satisfying turn. Professor Haddad announced the semi-final rankings for the Founders Cup, scored blind by outside judges on the written submissions alone. No names, no faces, no family pledges. Open Lane placed first, by a distance. Arav's team scraped into the bracket in the last qualifying slot, carried entirely by his partner's spreadsheet. For one afternoon, on the one field where his father's money couldn't reach, Arav Malhotra learned exactly where he stood, and the whole cohort saw it. He smiled through that too, but something behind his eyes had changed, and Marcus, who had spent his whole life reading dangerous rooms, saw it first. "He's not gonna let us win," Marcus said quietly on the bus that night, watching the city slide past. "Guys like that don't lose to guys like us. They flip the board." "Then we make sure," Danny said, "that when he flips it, he does it where everyone can see his hands." He had no idea how literally that would come true. The Founders Cup final ran as a live event. Each team took the main stage of the glass auditorium, ran a 9-minute pitch with a live product demo streamed to the big screen, and took fire from the judges. The demo was the heart of it. For Open Lane, the demo was everything. A live walkthrough of the actual working app, real dispatch data flowing across the screen. The whole thing routed through Marcus's engine from a laptop plugged into the house AV system backstage. There was one more thing about Open Lane that only Danny knew. Buried deep in the product, not in anything a user would ever see, but woven into the source, in the commit history and in a hidden founder's note inside the code itself, was a signature. A single line, written the first night he and Marcus got the matching engine to run, at 2 a.m. in the back of the 910 bus. It read, "Built by the driver's son, for everyone who drives us home." It was a private thing, the kind of quiet joke a person leaves inside their own work for no one but themselves. Danny had forgotten it was even there. He had no idea, yet, that it would become the one piece of proof no amount of money could rename, reword, or scrub. Because a thief can rename every file and still never find a fingerprint he doesn't know exists. 2 days before the final,
The teams handed their demo laptops to the AV crew for setup and sound checks. The machines were logged, sealed in numbered cases, and stored in the locked control booth overnight. Standard procedure. Nobody thought about it. Arov thought about it.
He couldn't outbuild OpenLane, so he decided to make sure OpenLane never ran. Using his father's name to talk his way past a work-study student minding the booth. I left my charger in my case. 2 minutes. You know who my family is. He got 20 unsupervised minutes with the sealed cases the night before the final. He didn't steal anything. He did something quieter and worse. He opened Danny and Marcus's laptop and corrupted the demo build, breaking the exact dependency that made the live product run, in a way that would look like the team's own sloppy code the instant it failed on stage. Then he resealed the case and walked out whistling. And then, because cruelty that gets away with itself always reaches for more, he set up Marcus to take a second fall. He had his partner quietly submit a concern to the honor committee that morning, an accusation, complete with a doctored screenshot, that Marcus had lifted OpenLane's core matching algorithm from a paper without attribution. It was a lie, but it was a lie with a screenshot and a rich family's lawyer behind it, timed to detonate the moment the demo failed, so that a crashed pitch would look like the desperate cover-up of 2 frauds who'd been caught. The final began. 2 teams pitched. Then Haddad called OpenLane. Danny and Marcus walked onto the stage, into that wall of light. Marcus was pale but steady. Danny had spent the morning talking him through it. They began, and for 4 minutes it was beautiful. The problem laid out with real faces, real drivers. Danny's own father's world made visible to a room full of people who'd never once thought about who got into the airport. The judges leaned in. Then, Danny said, "Let me show you the live product," and clicked to the demo. The screen threw up an error, then another. The app didn't load. Marcus dove for the keyboard, fingers flying, and Danny kept talking, calm on the outside, but the build was gutted. The thing they'd made was there and not there, like a car with the engine quietly pulled. 9 minutes is a very long time to die on a stage. A few of Arov's friends laughed, the sound carrying in the big room. Somewhere a judge sighed and made a note. The pitch ended in a scatter of polite, pitying applause, the worst kind there is. And then, before they were even off the stage, Haddad was handed a note. The honor committee wanted to see Marcus Bishop now, regarding plagiarism. It happened fast, and it happened in public, which was the point. Marcus was pulled into a side room. The doctored screenshot was laid in front of him. Arov's partner confirmed the concern. And because the demo had just failed in front of 400 people, the story wrote itself. The scholarship kid had stolen his idea, panicked, and sabotaged his own broken demo to hide it. By that evening, Marcus Bishop was suspended pending investigation, his name posted on the internal notice, his scholarship frozen. A first-generation student, 1 semester in, was staring down expulsion for the one thing he would never do. And the stakes underneath it were not small. Marcus's mother cleaned rooms at a hospital across town and had taken a second job to cover what the scholarship didn't. Marcus sent part of his tiny stipend home every month for his little sister's asthma medication. The suspension didn't just threaten a diploma, it threatened the entire fragile bridge his family was walking across, and Arov Malhotra had set fire to it for a trophy shaped like an arrow. When Danny found him, Marcus was sitting on the floor of their dorm room, in the dark, his back against the bed, phone in his hand, not calling anyone. "They think I stole it," he said. His voice had no bottom to it. "My own work. I built that engine on a bus." He looked up. "My mom cried on the phone, Danny. She thinks I did something wrong. She's never gonna fully believe I didn't, because people like us don't get the benefit of the doubt." Danny sat down on the floor next to him. For a long moment he said nothing. Outside, the bell in the old tower rang the hour. "Marcus," he
he said finally, and his voice had changed. Something underneath it had gone very quiet and very hard. I need you to trust me for 1 week. Can you do that? Trust you to do what? You take the bus. You send money home like I do. What can you possibly... 1 week, Danny repeated. Don't sign anything they put in front of you. Don't withdraw. Don't let anyone talk you into a deal to make it quiet. Just hold on for 1 week. That night, for the first time in a year, Danny took out the phone with the single-starred contact, a woman named Eleanor Voss, general counsel of Meridian Education Group and the executor of his mother's estate. He sat on the edge of his bed and looked at her name for a long time and thought about the promise he'd made a dying woman. Stay a student until you graduate. Then he thought about a broken demo, a doctored screenshot, and a boy on the floor in the dark whose little sister needed her medicine. Mom, he thought, I think this is exactly what you sent me here to find, and I think you'd want me to end it. He pressed coal. Eleanor Voss had been Ada Bellows' lawyer for 19 years, had negotiated the acquisition of Kingsley itself, and had not raised her voice since a deposition in the previous decade. When her phone lit up at midnight with the name Daniel, she was awake and sitting up before the second ring. Tell me you're safe, she said.
I'm fine, Danny said. He told her all of it. The parking lane, the car, the cafe, the honor board complaints, and finally, the sabotaged demo, and the roommate suspended for a theft he didn't commit. Eleanor listened without interrupting, the way his mother used to. When he finished, there was a silence on the line. Your mother, Eleanor said at last, spent $40 million and 10 years to find out whether that school had a spine. It seems you found out for free. So I'm going to ask you the only question that matters, Daniel. Do you want to be angry, or do you want to win? So completely that it can never be reversed, and no one it touches ever has to fight it again. I want to win, Danny said. Cleanly, in daylight, in front of everyone. Then we don't make a scene, Eleanor said, and he could hear his mother smile in her voice. We build the record until it's too heavy to lift. We move quietly, and when the moment comes, we let them make the scene, for us. What followed over the next 6 days was a masterclass in patience. Danny did not march into the dean's office. He did not say his name. Working with Eleanor, he did what his mother had taught him at the dinner table before he was 10. He gathered the truth until it was undeniable, and then he let the truth do the shouting. First, authorship. OpenLane lived in a version control system that logged every change, every night for months. A fossil record of 2 kids building something real in the back of a bus. Eleanor's forensic people pulled the full history, hundreds of commits, time-stamped, tied to Danny's and Marcus's accounts, going back to the fall. More than that, months earlier, on Haddad's own advice, the team had filed a provisional patent application on the matching engine, a government filing, a date stamped by a federal office that did not care whose father pledged what. The idea Arav's partner claimed Marcus had stolen had been documented as Marcus's own in the records of the United States government, long before the accusation existed. The plagiarism charge didn't just fall apart, it reversed and pointed the other way. Second, the sabotage. Eleanor's team requested the auditorium's own security footage, the school systems being, in the end, governed by the company she worked for. There was the control booth. There was the timestamp. And there was Arav Malhotra, the night before the final, talking his way past a work-study student, opening a numbered case that was not his, bent over Danny and Marcus's laptop for 11 minutes, and resealing it. The corrupted build had a modification time. The footage had a matching clock. The story the machine told did not have a single gap in it. Third, and this was the part that made even Eleanor Voss pause, the pattern of favors. Because once you have the authority to look, you find everything. His prior win in a sophomore case competition traced back to a judge who'd been a guest of the Malhotra family the same month.
And Vikram Malhotra's $15 million pledge for the trading floor came with a quiet, lawyered clause about his son's continued recognition and standing at the school. None of it had ever been designed to survive daylight, because none of these people had ever imagined the lights would come on. But building a case in daylight is one thing. Keeping a year-long secret from a man like Vikram Malhotra is another. And here, for the first time, the story turned genuinely dangerous. Because the moment the Malhotras' lawyers caught wind that a scholarship kid's complaint and a suspended roommate's appeal were suddenly being handled by serious outside counsel, they did what powerful families do when the ground shifts. They went hunting. Vikram put an investigator on everyone causing trouble, which meant, inevitably, on Danny Cole. For 3 days, Danny felt the walls tighten. A man in a parked car photographed him at the bus stop. Someone called the dining hall asking about the Cole kid. Who are his people? A request went to the registrar on convincing letterhead for Danny Cole's full aid file and hometown records. If the investigator pulled that thread hard enough, the whole disguise could unravel before the board could seat him. And Arav's lawyers would flip the entire story into a tale of a spoiled heir who'd catfished a poor student for sport. Danny called Eleanor at midnight. They're digging. If they learn who I am before this is official, they'll say I engineered all of it, that Marcus was my prop. I need to stay invisible 3 more days.
Then they'll find precisely the boring, airtight nobody we built for them, Eleanor said. Quietly and lawfully, Meridian's people made sure every thread the investigator pulled ran into sealed scholarship trusts and dead-end records, all real, all impenetrable. The man in the car turned up a broke transfer student with a driver father and nothing else, and reported back that Danny Cole was exactly what he seemed. Reassured his son's tormentor was a nobody, Vikram called off the hunt. It was the last comfortable night he would have. Meanwhile, Arav made the mistake that sharpened the whole blade. Nervous that the appeal wasn't dying the way it should, he decided to lock down a witness, and he chose Zoe Tran, the sophomore from the cafe, because she'd been backstage as a volunteer and had, in fact, seen him near the control booth that night. He cornered her outside the library and offered her real money, enough to erase a year of her own aid, to sign a statement saying she'd seen Marcus tampering with the laptop. "You're smart," he told her. "Smart people pick the winning side early." For one long moment, Zoe thought about her tuition, her family, everything she was afraid to lose. Then she thought about a $100 bill she'd pushed back across a counter, and a boy who'd said, "We don't take blood money at this register." "No," she said. Her voice shook, but she said it. "You want to know the difference between you and them? They were decent to me when I was nobody. You're only interested in me now that I'm useful. I'm not for sale." She walked away on legs that barely held her. And then, because courage grows the instant you use it, she went straight to Professor Haddad and repeated all of it, including what she'd actually seen at the booth. Haddad wrote it down, dated it, and signed as witness. That was Arav's fatal error. He had sabotaged a demo and framed a boy. Now he had attempted to buy false testimony in front of a witness brave enough to report it and a professor willing to record it. The record had grown its sharpest edge, and Arav himself had handed it over. The emotional low came on the 5th day. Marcus's mother, frightened by the suspension letter and its talk of restitution, had been contacted by someone suggesting the family could make the whole thing quietly go away if Marcus simply admitted fault and withdrew. Exhausted, terrified of the debt, she'd begun to think it was the only way. Marcus called Danny from the stairwell, hollow. "Maybe I just sign it, man. Maybe I take the deal and go home and this stops costing my mom sleep. You keep saying wait, but waiting is a rich person's move. People like us don't have a week to spare." Danny stood at his window, looking at the tower on the hill, and made himself say the hardest sentence in the plan. "One more day, Marcus. Give me one more day, and then I promise you,
You and your mom will never have to wait on anyone's mercy again. The next morning, an ally he hadn't asked for stepped up. Professor Nadia Haddad, who had been quietly sick over the whole thing, found Danny in the empty studio and set a folder on the desk. That's every draft, every commit summary, every piece of feedback I gave your team since October, dated in my own hand, she said. And my written statement that the open lane engine is Marcus Bishop's work. I watched him build it. I let a family with a checkbook make me hesitate for exactly 1 day, and I have hated myself for every hour of it. She squared her shoulders. Whatever you're planning, I'll stand up and say all of it, in front of the dean, the donors, whoever. On the record.
Danny shook her hand. The pieces were nearly all in place. The commit history, the federal patent stamp, the booth footage, the bribe witnessed and signed, the admissions email, the rigged sophomore prize, the pledge with the ugly clause. A brave sophomore, a brave professor, and one arrogant young man who had spent a year loudly insisting his family basically owned the place and was, in 3 days, going to say it into a microphone in front of everyone at the exact moment he discovered he was standing in a building the driver's son owned. There was one last piece. On the 6th night, Eleanor called back. "It's done," she said. "The Meridian Board convened this afternoon. Given documented misconduct at a wholly owned institution, the admissions fraud, the sabotage, the retaliation against a student who told the truth, and per your mother's trust, control passes to you on your 21st birthday, which the trust accelerates upon your written request as sole heir." A pause. "That request is signed, Daniel. The board will be waiting on the line tomorrow at noon, during the Founders Cup final, to formally seat the new chairman of Meridian Education Group." Her voice warmed. "Your mother would be unbearably proud. Wear something she'd have liked. And Daniel, bring your father. He should be in that room." Danny hung up and walked to the window of his little dorm room and looked out at the tower on the hill glowing against the dark. Tomorrow it would ring at noon, and this time the whole school would learn who the driver's son really was. The morning of the Founders Cup final, the glass auditorium of Kingsley gleamed like a showroom. Beneath the steel motto, "Merit before means," 400 seats filled with students, faculty, alumni, and press. On the stage sat the judges' table, and on a lit pedestal, the crystal Founders Cup. In the front rows sat the important people. Dean Prescott, adjusting his tie too often, the head of the donor board, a row of venture investors, and in the seats of honor, Vikram Malhotra and 2 lawyers in matching gray, there to enjoy the coronation and, afterward, to unveil the plaque for the Malhotra trading floor. And in the back row, in a plain navy hoodie, sat Danny Bello. Beside him, because Danny had insisted and because Eleanor Voss had made 2 phone calls that made it happen, sat his father, Joe, uncomfortable in his good jacket, turning his cap in his hands, not understanding why the sharp-eyed lawyer had told him this was the room to be in. And beside Joe sat Marcus, still officially suspended, brought in through a side door, jaw tight, not knowing why Danny had begged him to come watch the thing that had broken him. The final resumed. Because Open Lane's demo had failed, the team had been scored near the bottom, and Arev's FinTech with a logo had, with a friendly judge and a dead favorite, been named the winner. Dean Prescott took the microphone and beamed. "It is my privilege to award this year's Founders Cup to a young man who represents the ambition of this school, Mr. Arev Malhotra." Applause. Arev rose, buttoned his blazer, and strode to the stage like it had been built for him. He lifted the crystal cup, turned to the room, and could not resist. He never could. "Thank you," Arev said. "You know, people love to talk about hard work." A ripple of uneasy laughter. His eyes found the back row. "My father is putting a $15 million trading floor on top of this building. My family basically funds this place. So really, this was always going to end this way." He smiled straight at Danny. And at exactly that moment, the tower bell began to ring noon. On the 12th stroke, the doors at the back of the auditorium opened, and a woman in an impeccable charcoal suit walked in, flanked by two people carrying document cases. Eleanor Voss did not hurry. She came straight down the center aisle, and something in the absolute certainty of her walk made the room go quiet. She stopped before the stage, turned to the dean, and spoke in a voice that reached every corner. "Dean Prescott, forgive the interruption. My name is Eleanor Voss. I am General Counsel of Meridian Education Group and executor of the estate of the late Ada Bello." She set a phone on the podium and pressed a button. "The full board of Meridian, the company that owns this school, is on the line. There is an announcement that will not wait." A voice filled the silent room. "This is Board Chair Pro Temporal Grace Adeyemi. As of noon today, per the trust of our founder Ada Bello, control of Meridian Education Group, and with it the ownership and governance of Kingsley School of Business, passes to her sole heir. Would the incoming chairman please come forward so the board may formally seat him?" Vikram Malhotra's lawyers stopped checking their watches, and in the back row, the young man in the navy hoodie stood up. Every head turned. Arav, still on the stage, still gripping the cup, laughed. A thin, confused sound. "What is this? He takes the bus."
Danny walked down the aisle. He did not hurry either. He passed Vikram Malhotra, who was staring at him with dawning horror, and he stopped for just a moment beside his father and put a hand on Joe's shoulder, and the whole room watched the owner's heir stand with the driver. Then he climbed the 3 steps, walked to the podium, and leaned toward the phone. "I'm here," he said. "Daniel Bello. I accept." "The board so recognizes Chairman Bello," said the voice, and the whole room turned the color of ash. Eleanor stepped forward, and with the unbothered precision of a woman who had done this before, laid a single business card on the podium and slid it toward Arav. Heavy stock, clean type. Daniel Bello, Chairman, Meridian Education Group. Beside it, she set a slim bound contract, its cover page visible to the front rows, and a heartbeat later, projected up onto the big screen where Arav's victory slides should have been, the acquisition agreement, 10 years old, by which Meridian Education Group had purchased Kingsley School of Business in full. Arav's own words hung in the air over the document he was now reading. "My family basically funds this place." Danny turned to him. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. "Give the cup to the people who earned it," he said. 7 words, the same 7 the whole story had opened on. Arav's mouth opened and closed. You can't just..." "I can, actually." Danny nodded to Eleanor, who opened the first case. "Let's do it in the order you earned it. You told this room your family funds this place. You said it into that microphone 30 seconds ago. So let's talk about what your family actually bought, and what it couldn't." He laid it out, 1 page at a time, calm as a surgeon, and the big screen carried every document to 400 people at once, so that no one would ever have to take anyone's word for anything.
"This is the version history of Open Lane," Danny said, and the screen filled with a dense column of timestamps scrolling back through the fall. Hundreds of commits, night after night, from 2 accounts. Built over 5 months by me and Marcus Bishop, most of it after 9 at night in the back of a city bus. And this, the screen split, is the provisional patent application on the matching engine, filed with the federal government in October, naming Marcus as inventor. He let it land. Marcus Bishop didn't plagiarize anything. A sound moved through the crowd. In the side row, Marcus had both hands over his mouth. "But you asked how I could prove Open Lane is ours," Danny went on. "And here's the part you could never have planned for, Arav. You corrupted our demo. You broke it so cleanly it looked like our own bad code." The screen changed. "You just didn't know that I sign my work.
The first night we got that engine running, I hit a line inside the source. A fingerprint buried where no user would ever see it. It's still there, in the build you sabotaged, exactly where I left it, because you never understood the thing well enough to find it. A single highlighted line glowed on the screen for the whole room to read. Built by the driver's son, for everyone who drives us home. You couldn't even break it well enough to erase that it was mine. Professor Haddad stood up in the second row. I can confirm every word, she said, her voice ringing. 8 months of dated drafts. The work is theirs. I'll swear to it anywhere. Next, Danny said. The demo didn't fail. It was killed. The screen plated, silent, time-stamped. The control booth, the night before the final. Arav talking his way past a work-study student, opening a sealed case that wasn't his, bent over a laptop for 11 minutes. That's you. That's our machine. That's the exact window the sabotage was written into the build. You didn't beat OpenLane. You unplugged it and called it weak.
The murmur in the room had turned into something lower and uglier. The sound of 400 people changing their minds about a person all at once. Then you framed Marcus for it, Danny said, to make a crime look like a confession. And when you got nervous, you offered a student named Zoe Tran enough money to erase a year of her aid if she'd sign a lie that she saw Marcus at that booth instead of you. In the crowd, Zoe stood, pale and steady, and nodded once. She said no. Then she reported it, and Professor Haddad witnessed and dated her account. Danny set the signed page down with the rest. Do you understand what that is, Arav? That's not a bad look. Attempting to buy false testimony is a crime. You didn't just cheat. You tried to purchase a poor kid's integrity, and it turned out she had more of it than your family's entire pledge. He turned briefly to Arav's partner and the friend who'd filmed the cafe stunt, sitting frozen in the third row. And the two of you helped, filed the false concern, held the camera, laughed on cue because standing next to him felt like power. The booth footage and the honor board metadata have all of your names on them. The conduct board will see every timestamp on Monday. They sank in their seats. Then Danny looked last at the front row, at Dean Prescott, whose face had gone the color of paper. And the adults in this room who saw a family with a checkbook and chose it over a student telling the truth, that is a longer conversation. It's going to happen upstairs this afternoon with the board still on the line.
Finally, he looked past Arav, straight at Vikram Malhotra. And the $15 million? You didn't fund a school, Mr. Malhotra. He set the last page down. That's not a gift. Vikram rose, gray-faced, one hand out. Let's be reasonable, young man. Surely there's an arrangement. Everything has a price. That, Danny said quietly, is exactly what my mother sent me here to find out. Whether this school still had anything money couldn't buy. He looked up at the steel letters over the stage. Merit before means. She spent 10 years and a fortune putting that spine back into this place. I'm not going to let you buy it out again in one afternoon. 400 people had just watched a tycoon try to buy the new owner of the company, 60 seconds after learning who he was. A few of them actually gasped at the nakedness of it. Danny didn't argue and didn't shout. He simply let the offer hang there until its own ugliness filled the room. Then he turned back to Arav and delivered the payoff, beat by beat. So here's how today ends. The Founders' Cup result is void. It goes to the team that actually won it, OpenLane. And since I have a conflict, I'll recuse myself from a penny of the prize. It goes to Marcus and to the drivers this thing was built to help. He lifted the crystal cup gently out of Arav's frozen hands. Marcus Bishop's suspension is vacated as of this moment. His record cleared, his scholarship restored and backpaid, with a written apology from this school in the alumni magazine. Your admission and your sophomore prize are referred to the board for review under the fraud findings. The sabotage and the attempted bribery go to the conduct board, and, where they cross into law, to the authorities. What happens to your father after that is not up to me. It's up to the regulators.
the thing your family always believed it stood above.
Heir of Malhotra, who had never in his life heard the word no, finally heard it, and something behind his face came apart. "You can't do this to me," he whispered. Danny looked at him, almost gently. "That's the thing, Erev. I do. I've known who you are for a year." He paused. "The question was always whether you knew who you were talking to, and you never did. Because you never once looked at the people you were cruel to. The roommate, the barista, the professor, the man who drove your family from the airport. You only ever measured what they could do for you. That's why you lost. Not because you aren't rich enough, because you aren't kind enough. You had every advantage a person can be handed, and the one test that mattered, you failed on day one, in a parking lane, with a stranger's bags you were too important to carry yourself. Security, real security, moving on Eleanor's quiet nod, began to walk toward the stage. Not for Marcus this time. Erev looked out for the friends who had laughed at every joke and found them staring at the floor. He looked for his father and found Vikram already half turned away, murmuring to a lawyer, calculating his own survival, because that had always been the only language the family truly spoke. And in that moment, Erev understood something that would follow him far longer than any expulsion. He had spent his whole life surrounded by people, and not one of them was standing with him, because he had never once stood with anyone else. His name was going on the top floor. The room was full of his victims, and the driver's son owned them both.
"For what it's worth," Danny said, quieter now, "this didn't have to be your story. If you'd carried your own bag that first morning, if you'd left Marcus alone or said please to my father, or been decent to one single person who could do nothing for you, you'd be walking out of here today with a trophy and a future. You had every advantage there is." But Danny wasn't finished, because a good ending isn't only about who falls, it's about who finally gets lifted. He stepped down off the stage and walked to the side row where Marcus was standing, shaking, not quite believing he was allowed to be there. "Marcus," Danny said, and his voice finally cracked just a little. "I couldn't tell you. I made a promise to a stubborn woman that I'd keep my name a secret until I understood her school. You want to know what taught me the most in a year here? It wasn't a class. It was a guy who did the SAT math in 20 minutes and still thought he was the one who was lucky to have me. You never treated me like I could do anything for you, because you thought I couldn't. That's the whole test. That's merit before means. You've been living those words since the day you smoothed $1 against a wall and thanked a vending machine." He turned to face the room. "Mr. Marcus Bishop is reinstated, effective now, cleared of every charge with full back pay on his scholarship. Open Lane wins the Founders Cup and its investment, and Meridian will match it, so the platform actually gets built, and the drivers it's for actually own it. And as my first act as chairman," he almost smiled, "I'm endowing the Ada Bello Award in my mother's name, given every year to the person in this community, student, staff, faculty, or the people who cook our food and drive our cars, who showed the most character to someone who could do nothing for them in return. Marcus, you're the first name on it. Rosa at the lead window is the second."
Then he found Zoe Tran in the crowd. "The night this whole thing turned," he said, "was the night you pushed a $100 bill back across a counter and then refused to sell a lie when saying yes would have fixed your whole year. He announced a permanently endowed integrity scholarship, full ride, and named her its first recipient." Zoe pressed both hands to her face. And then Danny walked to the back of the auditorium, to his father, who was standing now, cap in his hands, eyes wet, still the calmest man in the room. Danny didn't make a speech. He just took the crystal cup and pressed it into his father's hands in front of everyone.
"This is yours too, Dad," he said. "It's your world we built it for. You got 1,000 strangers home safe and never once asked for credit. She married the kindest man she ever met, and she was right." He turned to the room. "For the record, the man some of you watched get ordered to pop a trunk last week is Joe Bello. He's the widower of the woman who saved this school. He could have spent the last 2 years being called sir in a corner office. He'd rather drive people home. If you want to know what character looks like, it's not on this stage. It's the guy holding the door." The auditorium came apart. 400 people on their feet, students crying, alumni clapping, Rosa from the late window whistling through her fingers, Professor Haddad grinning like a woman who'd found her nerve and meant to keep it. Marcus and Danny stood in the middle of it, 2 kids who'd built something true in the back of a bus, and neither of them said anything because they didn't need to.
At the edges of the room, quietly, Vikram Malhotra and his lawyers were escorted out one door. Aurav went out another, no longer a prince, just a young man who'd never been told no and had now been told it by an entire school at once. The last thing he saw before the door closed was the driver's son, standing beneath the words "merit before means," being lifted up by a room full of people who'd finally understood that he had been, all along, the richest person in every room he'd ever quietly walked into, and the least cruel. In the weeks that followed, though the video only ever captures that one morning, everything rolled out just as Danny had promised. Marcus's record was wiped clean, his scholarship restored and back paid. His mother quit the second job, and his sister's medicine arrived on time, every month, without a knot in anyone's stomach. Open Lane was built for real, and the first drivers to own a piece of it were the airport regulars Joe Bello had shared a coffee urn with for 20 years. Aurav's fraudulently smoothed admission was rescinded. His father's pledge became the opening exhibit in a regulatory inquiry into donations for favors, and the Malhotra trading floor was never built. The top floor became, at Danny's direction, a free late-night study hall named for a professor's mentor, open to every scholarship kid who was afraid the school would one day realize it had let in the wrong person. Dean Prescott resigned before he could be removed, and the driver's son took his seat on the board. But he kept riding the 910 bus because that, his mother had taught him, was where you found out the truth about everything. Aurav Malhotra had a father who owned half a skyline and a name headed for the top floor of a business school. Joe Bello had a town car, a roll of butter rum candies, and 26 years of getting strangers home safe. Only one of them still had their dignity when the tower bell rang noon.
So here's the question I want you to answer in the comments. Was Danny right to stay hidden for a whole year? Or should he have said who he was the very first morning in that parking lane? Tell me below, and be honest, because we've all been tempted to measure someone by their job or their shoes at least once. If you believe how you treat people should count for more than where you started, hit subscribe and stay for the next one. The scholarship boy a room full of aristocrats tried to expel from their centuries-old boarding school, who turned out to be the anonymous examiner deciding whether the school survived at all. You won't believe how that one ends.